Picture this scene. You are cruising at 35,000 feet above the vast Pacific Ocean. The aircraft hums quietly through the night sky. Passengers wrapped in blankets, lost in peaceful sleep. Flight attendants move silently down the aisles, their footsteps muffled by carpet. Everything appears perfectly normal until a voice crackles through the speakers, breaking the tranquil silence like thunder. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Rodriguez speaking. We have an urgent situation. If there are any military pilots on board, please identify yourselves immediately. We need your assistance. The words hang in the air like a death sentence. Passengers jolt awake, confusion painting their faces. Murmurs ripple through the cabin like wildfire. What kind of emergency requires a military pilot? Hearts begin racing as the gravity of the situation sinks in. In row 10, seat C, a figure stirs beneath a gray travel blanket. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, age 32, opens her eyes slowly. Her auburn hair is pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wears a comfortable navy sweater over dark jeans. To everyone around her, she looks like any other tired traveler heading home from a business conference. A laptop bag sits in the overhead compartment, filled with medical journals and research papers. But what nobody knows is that Dr. Sarah Mitchell carries two lives within her. By day, she saves patients as a trauma surgeon at Seattle General Hospital. By night, in her dreams, she still flies. For 8 years, she served as a Navy pilot, commanding F-18 Super Hornets from aircraft carriers across the globe. Call sign, Phoenix. She had earned that name after surviving a crash that should have killed her, rising from the wreckage like a mythical bird reborn from flames. Sarah had left military service 3 years ago, trading her flight suit for surgical scrubs. The transition was not easy. She missed the rush of breaking the sound barrier, the precision required in aerial combat, the brotherhood of her squadron. But she also carried scars that ran deeper than the physical ones on her hands from that crash. Good people had died under her command. Friends who trusted her judgment, who followed her into battles that some never returned from. The captain's voice comes through again, more urgent this time. Please, if there are any pilots with military experience, we desperately need your help. This is not a drill. Sarah's military instincts activate instantly. Her body straightens, senses sharpening. She notices details that escaped her attention moments before. The subtle vibration in the aircraft feels wrong. The hum of the engines carries an irregular rhythm. Through her window, she can see flashing lights on the wing that should not be there. A flight attendant hurries past, her composed, professional mask slipping to reveal genuine fear. Sarah reaches out and gently catches her arm. "Excuse me," she says quietly. "What is happening?" The flight attendant, a woman named Maria with kind eyes, leans down. Her voice is barely above a whisper. "We have lost communication with ground control, and our navigation systems are malfunctioning. The captain says we are flying blind." Sarah feels ice form in her stomach. Flying blind at 35,000 feet over the Pacific Ocean means they could be hundreds of miles off course with no way to find their destination. Worse, other aircraft in the area would have no knowledge of their position, creating the risk of mid-air collision. "How long have we been without navigation?" Sarah asks. "About 20 minutes," Maria replies. "The captain tried everything, but our instruments keep giving false readings. We were supposed to land in Honolulu in 2 hours, but now we do not even know which direction we are flying." Sarah closes her eyes and takes a deep breath. Every fiber of her being screams at her to stay in her seat, to remain invisible. She came on this flight to escape the weight of responsibility, to be just another traveler with no lives depending on her decisions. The medical conference in Tokyo had been exhausting, filled with presentations about trauma surgery techniques and discussions about saving lives under impossible circumstances.
She was looking forward to a week of vacation in Hawaii, walking on beaches with no pager, no emergency calls, no life-or-death decisions. But the captain's voice echoes through the cabin again, and this time there is something different in his tone, something that makes her blood run cold. "Ladies and gentlemen, I need to be completely honest with you. We are facing multiple system failures. Our primary and backup navigation systems are offline. Radio communication is intermittent at best. We are currently flying on manual control, but visibility is decreasing due to weather conditions ahead. We estimate we have approximately 4 hours of fuel remaining." 4 hours. Sarah does the math quickly in her head. If they are flying in the wrong direction, they could end up over empty ocean with no land in sight when the fuel runs out. The nearest runway might be hundreds of miles away. Even if they turn around right now, they might not have enough fuel to reach their original destination. Around her, passengers are beginning to panic. A man in row 9 is hyperventilating into a paper bag. A woman across the aisle clutches a rosary, her lips moving in silent prayer. Children are crying, sensing the fear of the adults around them, even if they don't understand the situation. Sarah thinks about her father, Admiral James Mitchell, who taught her to fly when she was 16 years old. He would tell her stories about pilots in World War II who faced impossible situations and found ways to bring their crews home. Heroes who made split-second decisions that meant the difference between life and death for everyone on board. You have a gift, Sarah. Not just the ability to fly, but the ability to stay calm when everyone else is falling apart. That is what makes a true pilot. Not the fancy maneuvers or the perfect landings, but keeping a clear head when lives are on the line. The turbulence begins suddenly, shaking the aircraft like a toy in the hands of an angry child. Oxygen masks drop from the ceiling as the plane lurches violently to the left. Passengers scream, and somewhere in the cabin, someone is praying loudly in Spanish. Sarah has felt this kind of turbulence before, in the eye of a typhoon over the South China Sea. She was flying a reconnaissance mission when her squadron encountered a storm system that meteorologists later called one of the most violent on record. 3 of her wingmen turned back, but Sarah pressed forward, gathering critical intelligence that saved a cargo ship and its crew of 30 sailors. The aircraft lurches again, and Sarah sees Maria, the flight attendant, stumble and fall against a seat. The woman picks herself up, straightens her uniform, and continues down the aisle, checking on passengers even though her face is pale with fear. That moment of quiet courage makes Sarah's decision for her. She unbuckles her seatbelt and stands up. The motion feels familiar, like muscle memory awakening after a long sleep. Her legs are steady despite the turbulence, her breathing controlled. She has spent thousands of hours in aircraft under far worse conditions than this. The walk down the aisle feels like the longest journey of her life. Every step takes her further from the anonymity she craved and closer to the responsibility she thought she had left behind. Passengers look up at her with desperate hope in their eyes, as if they sense that she might be their salvation. An elderly gentleman reaches out and touches her hand as she passes. "God bless you, dear," he whispers. Sarah reaches the cockpit door and knocks firmly. Through the small window, she can see Captain Rodriguez, a man in his 50s with silver hair and deep worry lines etched around his eyes. His co-pilot, a younger man named Thompson, according to his name tag visible through the glass, is frantically working through a checklist. Captain Rodriguez opens the door and looks at Sarah with a mixture of hope and skepticism. "Are you military?" "Navy pilot, 8 years active duty, F-18 Super Hornets, carrier operations and combat missions. Medical doctor now, but I remember how to fly." The captain's expression transforms instantly from doubt to relief. "Thank God! Come in, please. We need all the help we can get." The cockpit is smaller than the fighter jet Sarah is accustomed to, but the basic layout is familiar. Instruments, controls, warning lights, the smell of electronics and aviation fuel. It feels like coming home after a long journey. "What is our situation?" Sarah asks, sliding into the jump seat behind the pilots. The captain does not sugarcoat the truth. "We lost GPS and inertial navigation simultaneously about 30 minutes ago. Radio contact with air traffic control is spotty at best. We are flying manually, but with cloud cover this thick, we have no visual references. We could be anywhere within a 200-mile radius of our planned route." Sarah studies the instrument panel, her training taking over. "Show me what readings you're getting from the backup systems." Thompson, the co-pilot, points to various gauges and displays. "Compass is spinning wildly, probably magnetic interference from the storm system we flew through. Altimeter is holding steady at 35,000 feet. Airspeed indicator shows 485 knots. Fuel remaining is 12,000 pounds.
None, Thompson replies. Our traffic collision avoidance system is not picking up anything within 100 miles. We are completely alone up here. The weight of responsibility settles on Sarah's shoulders like a familiar coat. 287 passengers and crew members, including families with children, elderly travelers, people with entire lives ahead of them. All of them depending on finding a solution to a problem that seems impossible. But Sarah has faced impossible problems before, in the mountains of Afghanistan, when her F-18 took ground fire and lost hydraulics, forcing her to land on a damaged runway under enemy attack. Over the Persian Gulf, when a missile malfunction nearly caused her to eject into shark-infested waters. Each time, she found a way to survive, to complete the mission, to bring everyone home. Captain Rodriguez is watching her carefully, studying her face for any sign that she might be able to help them find a solution. "What are you thinking, Doctor?" Sarah takes a deep breath and begins to formulate a plan. "We need to establish our position using dead reckoning. When did you last have a confirmed GPS reading?" "About 45 minutes ago," Thompson answers. "We were approximately 400 nautical miles northeast of Honolulu on a heading of 225 degrees at 35,000 feet. Sarah closes her eyes and visualizes the Pacific Ocean, recalling charts and navigation aids from her military days. If they maintained that heading and speed, they should still be roughly on course for Honolulu. But the storm system could have pushed them off track, and without navigation confirmation, they might be flying toward empty ocean." "Do we have any paper charts on board?" Sarah asks. Captain Rodriguez reaches into a flight bag and produces several aviation charts covering the Hawaiian Islands and surrounding ocean areas. Sarah spreads them out on a small table behind the pilot seats and begins making calculations. She plots their last known position and draws a circle representing the area they could have reached with 30 minutes of flight time, accounting for possible wind drift from the storm. The circle is discouragingly large, encompassing thousands of square miles of open ocean. "Here is what we are going to do," Sarah says, her voice carrying the authority of someone who has commanded squadrons in combat. "We maintain our current heading for 20 more minutes while I try to raise someone on the radio. If we cannot establish communication or get a navigation fix by then, we turn southeast toward the main Hawaiian Islands. It is our best chance of finding land before we run out of fuel." "What if we are already past the islands?" Thompson asks. "What if we are flying toward empty ocean?" "Then we have bigger problems," Sarah replies honestly. "But based on our last known position and estimated flight path, we should still be northeast of the island chain. If we turn southeast and descend to a lower altitude, we might be able to break through this cloud cover and get visual references." Captain Rodriguez nods slowly. "It is risky, but it beats flying blindly until we run out of fuel." "What altitude do you recommend?" Sarah studies the weather radar display. The storm system extends from about 15,000 feet up to 40,000 feet. If we descend to 10,000 feet, we should be below the worst of it. We will burn more fuel at lower altitude, but visibility should improve dramatically. The plan is dangerous. Descending into a storm system over the Pacific Ocean without navigation aids violates every safety protocol in aviation.
but continuing to fly blindly at high altitude guarantees disaster when the fuel runs out. "All right, Doctor," Captain Rodriguez says. "We will try your plan. Take us down to 10,000 feet." Sarah moves to the co-pilot seat as Thompson slides over to make room. Her hands find the controls instinctively, muscle memory guiding her fingers to switches and levers she has not touched in 3 years. The aircraft responds to her touch like a living thing, and for a moment she feels the old thrill of flight, the pure joy of controlling a machine designed to defy gravity. "Beginning descent," Sarah announces over the intercom. "Passengers and crew, please ensure your seatbelts are fastened and prepare for turbulence. We are descending to a lower altitude to improve visibility." The aircraft noses down gently, losing altitude at 1,000 feet per minute. As they descend through 25,000 feet, the turbulence intensifies. The aircraft shudders and bounces as it encounters wind shears and pressure changes within the storm system. At 20,000 feet, they enter the heart of the storm. Lightning flashes outside the cockpit windows, illuminating towering thunderheads that stretch in every direction. Rain hammers against the windscreen, and the aircraft is tossed around like a leaf in a hurricane. Sarah fights the controls, making constant adjustments to keep them on course. This is worse than anything she experienced in military flight training, worse than flying through combat zones under enemy attack. The storm seems alive, malevolent, determined to tear their aircraft apart. A particularly violent updraft launches them 500 feet higher in seconds. Then a downdraft slams them back down. Several passengers scream, and she can hear crying from the cabin. She grips the controls tighter, her knuckles white with strain. "Steady, steady," she murmurs to herself, using the same words her father taught her during her first solo flight 20 years ago. "The aircraft is strong. Trust the machine. Trust your training. Trust yourself." At 15,000 feet, they break through the bottom of the storm clouds. Suddenly, the turbulence stops, and through breaks in the lower cloud layer, Sarah can see something that makes her heart leap with hope. Lights. Tiny pinpricks of light scattered across the darkness below like fallen stars. "Land," she whispers. "There are islands down there." Captain Rodriguez peers out the window, his face breaking into the first smile Sarah has seen since entering the cockpit. "Those lights could be from Maui or the Big Island. We might actually make it." Sarah banks the aircraft toward the lights, following her instincts and years of experience reading terrain from the air. The islands of Hawaii have a distinctive pattern when viewed from above, and she thinks she recognizes the shape of coastlines emerging from the darkness. But even as hope begins to build, she knows their problems are far from over. They still need to identify exactly which island they are approaching, locate a suitable airport, and execute a landing with limited fuel and no approach guidance from ground control. The real test is just beginning, and Sarah Mitchell, the doctor who thought she had left military flying behind forever, is about to face the greatest challenge of her life. In the cabin behind them, 287 passengers wait in the darkness, their lives hanging in the balance, trusting that the woman from row 10 has the skills and courage to bring them safely home. Sarah circles the aircraft lower, dropping to 8,000 feet as she tries to identify the landmass below. The scattered lights are becoming clearer now, forming patterns of roads and communities. Through gaps in the remaining clouds, she can make out the distinctive shape of a volcanic mountain silhouetted against the night sky. "That is Mauna Kea," Captain Rodriguez says, pointing to the massive peak. "We are approaching the big island from the north. Kona International Airport should be on the western coast." Sarah banks the aircraft westward, following the coastline that is now visible in the moonlight breaking through the clouds. Her eyes scan the darkness below, searching for the distinctive pattern of runway lights that would indicate an airport. "There!" Thompson calls out, pointing to a cluster of lights ahead. "Runway lights at 10 o'clock." Sarah sees them too, twin rows of white lights stretching across the darkness like a landing strip of stars. Relief floods through her, but she quickly suppresses it. Finding the runway is only half the battle. They still need to execute a landing without approach guidance, with fuel running dangerously low, and with nearly 300 souls depending on her skills. Captain Rodriguez grabs the radio microphone. "Kona Tower, this is Trans-Pacific Flight 447, declaring emergency. We are approximately 10 miles north of your position with navigation failure and low fuel, requesting immediate landing clearance." Static fills the cockpit for several seconds. Then a voice breaks through, clear and strong. "Trans-Pacific 447, Kona Tower reads you loud and clear. You are cleared to land runway 17. Wind is calm, visibility unlimited. Emergency vehicles are standing by. Welcome back to civilization." The words bring tears to Captain Rodriguez's eyes. He looks at Sarah with profound gratitude. "Get us down safe, Doctor. I know you can do this." Sarah nods and begins her approach. She extends the landing gear and flaps, feeling the aircraft slow and configure for landing. The runway grows larger in the windscreen, the lights becoming brighter and more defined with each passing second. At 2,000 feet, she calls out, "Landing checklist complete. Gear down and locked. Flaps at 30 degrees. Airspeed 180 knots." The aircraft descends smoothly through 1,000 feet, then 500 feet. Sarah makes micro-adjustments to the controls, keeping the descent rate steady at 700 feet per minute. The runway threshold passes beneath them, and she gently pulls back on the yoke, flaring the aircraft for touchdown. The main wheels kiss the runway with barely a bump. Sarah deploys the spoilers and applies reverse thrust, bringing the massive aircraft to a controlled stop halfway down the runway. Around them, emergency vehicles with flashing lights race alongside, ready to respond if needed. But they are not needed. The landing is perfect. In the cabin, passengers erupt into applause, cheers, and tears of relief. Strangers hug each other, celebrating their survival. Parents hold their children close, whispering prayers of thanksgiving. The elderly gentleman from the aisle reaches across to shake hands with his neighbor, both men grinning through tears. Sarah sits back in her seat, her hands trembling now that the adrenaline is fading. Captain Rodriguez places a hand on her shoulder and squeezes gently. "You just saved 287 lives," he says quietly. "We would not have made it without you." But Sarah shakes her head. "We saved them together, Captain. You kept this aircraft flying when systems failed. You made the call for help. I just helped navigate us home." Thompson, the co-pilot, who has been silent during the final approach, turns to look at Sarah with awe in his eyes. "Where did you learn to fly like that? That was the smoothest emergency landing I have ever seen." Sarah smiles tiredly. "My father taught me that every landing should be smooth, emergency or not. The passengers do not care about the circumstances. They just want to walk away safely." As they taxi to the gate, fire trucks and ambulances follow at a respectful distance. Airport workers have gathered on the tarmac, watching the aircraft that made an emergency landing without navigation aids, guided only by the skills of a pilot who happened to be sleeping in row 10. When the aircraft finally stops at the gate and the engines shut down, Sarah removes her headset and stands slowly. Her legs feel weak, and exhaustion crashes over her like a wave. Captain Rodriguez and Thompson stand as well, and both men embrace her in turn. "Thank you does not seem adequate," Captain Rodriguez says. "You gave us our lives back. You gave all those families their loved ones back." Sarah steps out of the cockpit and into the cabin. The passengers have been informed that she was the one who helped land the aircraft safely. As she appears, they rise to their feet as one, applauding until their hands hurt. The sound is deafening, overwhelming, beautiful. A little boy, no more than 6 years old, runs down the aisle and throws his arms around her waist. "You're a hero," he says simply. Sarah kneels down to his level, her eyes glistening with tears. "No, sweetheart, your captain is the hero. I just helped him do his job." But the passengers disagree. They crowd around her, shaking her hand, hugging her, thanking her with words that come from the depths of their hearts. A businessman hands her his card, insisting that he wants to fly her anywhere in the world, first class, whenever she wants. A grandmother kisses her cheek and calls her an angel. A young couple with a newborn baby simply hold her hand and cry. Maria, the flight attendant, pushes through the crowd and embraces Sarah tightly. "You gave us our lives back," she whispers. "I have 2 children at home. Because of you, I get to see them again." When Sarah finally steps off the aircraft and onto the jet bridge, she sees a crowd of airport personnel, emergency responders, and airline executives waiting. They applaud as she appears, and a senior airline official steps forward to shake her hand. "Dr. Mitchell, on behalf of Trans-Pacific Airlines and everyone here, thank you. You demonstrated extraordinary courage and skill. We are forever grateful." Sarah accepts their thanks graciously, but inside she feels something shifting. For 3 years, she has carried guilt about the pilots she lost in combat, believing she was not worthy of the title of hero. She thought leaving military service meant leaving behind the weight of responsibility for others' lives. But tonight has taught her something profound. Being a hero is not about seeking glory or recognition. It is about answering the call when others need you, even when you are tired, even when you are afraid, even when you think you have nothing left to give. In the terminal, news crews have gathered, having heard about the emergency landing. Cameras flash as she walks through, but she waves them away politely. "This is not about me," she tells a reporter. "This is about a crew that worked together and passengers who kept their courage during a frightening situation." Later that night, alone in a hotel room provided by the airline, Sarah sits on the bed and stares out at the Hawaiian night sky. Stars shine brilliantly above the ocean, the same stars that guided sailors and aviators for centuries before GPS and modern navigation existed. Her phone buzzes with messages, dozens of texts from former squadron members who saw the news. Her father, Admiral Mitchell, calling to tell her how proud he is. The hospital in Seattle checking to make sure she's okay and offering her as much time off as she needs. But the message that touches her most deeply is from Captain Rodriguez. It is simple and heartfelt. "Thank you for reminding me why we fly. Not for the routine flights or the perfect days, but for the moments when everything goes wrong and we have to rely on skill, courage, and each other. You are welcome in my cockpit anytime." Sarah lies back on the bed, feeling peace settle over her like a warm blanket. She has spent 3 years running from her past, trying to forget the pilot she used to be. But tonight has shown her that she does not have to choose between her 2 lives. She can be both Dr. Mitchell, the trauma surgeon who saves lives in the operating room, and Phoenix, the pilot who brings people home safely from the sky. The next morning, as the sun rises over the Pacific Ocean, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Sarah stands on the beach near her hotel. The sand is warm beneath her bare feet, and the sound of waves provide a soothing rhythm that calms her mind. She thinks about the 287 passengers who woke up this morning with their families, who get to continue their lives because a series of coincidences put a former military pilot in row 10 of a flight that desperately needed one. Life is unpredictable, she thinks, echoing words her father once told her. Sometimes you are exactly where you need to be, even when you don't know it yet. Sarah pulls out her phone and dials a number she hasn't called in 3 years. It is answered on the second ring. Admiral Mitchell speaking. "Hi, Dad," Sarah says softly. "I think I'm ready to talk about that day, about the mission."